All right, let's go ahead and this is John Moore. I'll call the meeting to order. Brenda, if you could take roll for us, please.
Absolutely. Board Member Brisky.
Present.
Board Member Mercier.
Present.
Board Member Ridley.
Okay.
Present.
Board Member Roth.
Present.
Board Member Freeman. Council Member Anderson.
Present.
Council Member Woodward.
Present.
Mayor Sierra. Vice Chair Hubenick.
Present.
And Chair Moore.
Present. All right, thank you. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from the July 12th Water and Sewer Board meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from July, what date was that, 11th?
12th.
12th, 2022.
In a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I'll make a. I'd like to suggest an edit under 5. 5A. Sorry, I'm flipping between the minutes and the agenda. Under 5A, we actually there was a motion by Ty to deny the variance request that happened before the tabling of that motion. So I just would like the record to reflect that additional motion. Is there any before we vote, is there any more discussion around that and whether there's any concerns about that adjustment before we vote? Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Is it optional for me to chime in or red tea?
Mr. Geeson, I think, well, we're going to give you a chance to talk under your, when we address your subject this week. Does that take care of your concerns?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, absolutely. All right, with that, can I get all in favor I'm sorry, let me be clear, for approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, and then we will have, let's see, is there a public forum? Anyone from the public outside of the variance request that'll be covered under item 5?
No, there is
Okay.
not.
All right, no public forum. All right, so with that, I'd like to take us to old business item 5A. We last month we asked the staff for some additional information on the variance request on 3106 South Acoma. I'd like staff to present the additional information, and then Mr. Geeson will give you a chance also as well to add any additional input that you may have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah Stone.
Good evening, all. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. A little slow to advance. There we go. Okay. So yes, thank you, Chair Moore. There were several follow-up items that we were asked to address at this meeting. So these are listed here. There's the 2018 example property. There's the current practices for duplexes and townhomes by our utilities review staff. There's the zoning of the subject property, which we also looked at the 2018 example zoning. And then there's the criteria that is used by the Englewood Board of Adjustments and Appeals for variance requests that the Water Sewer Board may be able to apply in this case. So again, here's the background for the specific variance request before you tonight. There was the request at 3106 South Acoma Street. to allow for a single water and sewer service line to serve 2 properties. So the proposed property line is shown in red, and then the existing water service line is shown in blue and goes to the front of the property. And then the existing sewer service line is shown in green and goes to the back of the property. Per City Code Section 12-1B7-A, each property must be served by a separate service connection. And there's no allowance for extension of the service from one premise to another. So any exception from this particular section of code would have to be approved by both the Water Sewer Board and the city manager. So taking a look at the 2018 property example, this was referenced as a similar situation to this property on Acoma Street. In 2018, the city approved this property as a duplex conversion, and the address was 3202 South Sherman Street. And this was separated into 2 condo units. City records do not indicate that this request was brought to the Water Sewer Board, but it was approved with conditions indicating that the utility bill would be addressed to an established condominium association or HOA or management authority. So the conditions noted that city staff must be provided a copy of the declaration of covenants for the condominium document and other documents so that city staff could review. And we were unable to locate those documents, but this was approved in this configuration shown on the screen, which shows the dark blue area around the duplex and the garages here on the right-hand side in light blue. The darker blue is common property. So the single water and sewer service line in this example was common property and managed by an HOA. So we also took a look at the city code and confirmed that there was no specific mention for duplexes in the utility section. And for multiple units or townhomes that are under the same ownership, there's typically one water line or sewer line can be permitted. However, each property, so specific unit, would have a service line that's connected off of a private service line, so that, for example, water could be shut off to those individual units without impacting other units. We also took a look at a minor subdivision plat for a proposed duplex construction, and that's shown on the screen here. And in this example, you'll see there's the blue line is water service lines, and it goes to each property. There's an individual meter for each individual unit, and then the service lines for the sewer service come in the back on the green shown in this figure. So this minor subdivision plat was approved because each unit had an individual water and sanitary sewer line. We confirmed the zoning for both the Acoma and Sherman properties. They are zoned for multiple units. The Acoma Street property is zoned R-2-B, and the Sherman Street property is zoned MU-R-3-B. Staff reviewed the code for specific criteria that could be, or that defined how the Water Sewer Board could consider variance requests, and didn't have specific criteria that's been identified. So we took a look at the Englewood Board of Adjustments and Appeals, and this criteria related to a zoning variance could be useful for the board as they consider this request. So I'll be happy to pull this up during discussion. I won't read through all these at the moment. So staff continues to recommend that the Water Sewer Board deny this variance request as the proposed water and sewer service line configuration does not meet existing city code. If the Water Sewer Board chooses to apply the Board of Adjustments and Appeals criteria, there is non-compliance with that zoning variance criteria. The property owner does have the option to construct a water and sanitary service line to each unit and assure both properties have separate service lines. And in the proposed configuration, future property owners will be negatively impacted. If one owner is delinquent on their utility bills, the city wouldn't have the ability to turn off water to only that property. The city also does not have the ability to bill the individual property owners if the two units aren't served by a single water service line. The property owners would also be required to share in the responsibility for maintaining the water and sanitary service lines. And again, as you know, as on the example picture from this property, that proposed property line does split, where part of those service lines would either be crossing the property line or on all one property and individually owned. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Sarah. This is John. Let me just jump in real quick that we'll, if the board has any clarifying questions for Sarah, can ask those now. We'll have a fuller discussion after we have the motion back on the table to vote in a little bit. And then again, after this, we'll also turn to the applicant. So, but any questions for Sarah in her presentation? Ty, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just curious, Sarah, do you have a rough number for what it looks like if a homeowner needs to replace a broken sewer line or a service line from the meter to their home? Is there a rough number that they would be splitting? Just kind of ballpark for me.
You know, I don't have that number. Peter, do you know that?
Yeah, I would say on a service service line for a water service line, I would say anywhere probably around like $10,000 if they needed to replace it. That's to replace the service line. The sewer line, if they're replacing the whole sewer line, that's even harder because you have to dig those up. So that could, I mean, I think it's minimum of $6,000 or $8,000, probably anywhere up to $20,000, somewhere in there. It's not an insignificant cost for either one.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just looking for a ballpark.
All right, great. Joe and then Jim.
Yeah, my question is that, is it possible to run multiple water meters off of one line going into a house, Sarah? Is that something that is done or could be done? I know that's not in this proposal, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, so that can be done. That is done in some of the review we did. We looked at you know, a property that had multiple units where the service line you know, came up to a point and then a private line was run to each individual unit. So yes, you could put a meter then on each of those private service lines.
Is it possible to do that like internally within a house, or would you have to bury lines outside and run them around to another entry point on the separate unit?
So if it's a city-owned meter, we would prefer to keep those outside.
Okay.
There are opportunities for sub-metering that you know, an HOA would do, and that may be a potential here.
Okay, thank you.
Jim.
Yes, my question is regarding the sewage line. There isn't a shut-off for a sewer line, is there? I mean, individual shut-offs?
Not for sewer.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Any additional questions for Sarah? All right, seeing none. Mr. Geeson, I'd like to give you an opportunity to provide additional input to the board.
Hey, thank you. Red T has some other research they've done, so I'm gonna turn it over to them.
Hi there, guys. Thanks for having us. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Bear with me here. Are you guys seeing it? Just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
Yes.
you've shown up. Cool, awesome. Cool, so I'll get to this section. Awesome, so this is for the minutes that we've got. Here we go. So the first thing we just wanted to kind of reiterate is that we did reach out to the city of Englewood and talk to staff members originally before we started this process. That would have been back in November, December of last year. We spoke with Englewood staff member Will Charles. He was in community development or planning. He was the person we reached out to. We wanted to make sure that our party wall agreement would cover everything that would needed to be covered so that homeowners were taken care of and so that the city was taken care of. He approved that just real quick, as well as saying that it would absolutely be possible to split this, and said that our project would be very similar to the subject property over on Sherman. I do have those emails pulled up. I can scroll through them, or I can send those over to you guys, but just wanted to, again, just bring that up. And then with the main concern of putting in all of the new lines is that we don't know how to do things without crossing or messing with the proper setbacks that you guys request via the code. I believe it's 5 feet from a property line or from an existing building, which puts us in a bit of a predicament just because it is a front back duplex, not a side-by-side duplex like the example that was shown on the new construction. Because obviously with new construction, we'd be able to move these around and it'd be a non-issue. That'd be something we do all the time and we wouldn't even blink an eye at. Just because it's not a proposed line so much as, I mean, it's not even a proposed building. This is just, we're hoping to divide this into units for ownership. It's really just trying to provide reasonable housing resources for attainably priced units in the area. We're not changing any demands or anything like that. One of our main concerns is we could not find any code that dictated how far from an existing tap we needed to be, because obviously there's a tap here that I've circled as well as a tap here. So maintaining 5 feet off of this property line to the south, as well as 5 feet off of this building here, gives us about a foot, maybe 1.5 feet, the entire length of the property, where we can thread the needle with that proposed, if we had to put in a secondary line. It's a very specific place that we'd even be able to get that to the back unit. I saw that Joe had mentioned potentially, talking about that same issue of where we would tie in. And then for the, this is just essentially our survey showing the different lengths. So this is a little less than 6 feet from the property line to the rear unit south facing foundation wall, which pushes, again, I think we have a total of 13.5 feet. So we really don't have a lot to work with once you tear up essentially 6 feet of that. We're just shy of 6 feet from there to there. So again, that's just that concern we have there, especially when considering there's a water tap existing right here and right here. Again, we just couldn't find that. So if you guys have the information for what those distances need to be, that would be helpful. And then with the sewer line, we have some even larger issues. There's an existing structure right here on the north side of the property, this shed. It's in pretty good shape, honestly. There's no way that we can get this is less than 5 feet between the shed and the north side of this rear unit. So right there, we would either have to start demoing buildings or not be able to meet the code, as well as we don't have enough space between the garage and the north side of the property to follow the existing sewer line, which then we're making a bunch of turns and essentially having to come out the south side of the property to tie into that sewer line. So again, it just proposes a lot of tricky things there. Again, if we're going to give each unit a little yard and space like we're hoping to, that gets very tricky with having nothing cross over one of the other properties. And then our last kind of thing we wanted to mention is that our party wall was approved by the city. Our party wall agreement, we would be setting up a party wall management authority, and that would take care of all items from roof to potentially shared lawn maintenance to any sort of demising wall repairs or foundation repairs that would fall under the shared responsibility of both owners. Electrical onto the site or something like that, as well as in this case, the water line. Things we could set up is an escrow to make sure that there is at least, say, 90 days worth of water bills in escrow, so that there's plenty of due time and due process for the management company to reach out to any of the owners if they are being delinquent on their water payment, just to make sure that, you know, obviously our goal is not to see anybody get caught off guard and end up, you know, losing their water, especially if they're paying their half of the bill, right? So that is something that we're certainly sensitive to, and we're happy to put whatever language is useful into our party wall agreement, as well as if it's easier for the board, we can essentially reparcel our site to look more like this Sherman Street, where it's all common shared space except for the literal borders of the buildings and the demising wall. And then everything else is just common ownership. If that simplifies things, we're also willing to do that as well, just so that it's not as much of an issue. So those were just kind of the things that we wanted to bring up and in our research that we found.
Yeah,
Mr. Geese, go ahead.
Yeah, mind chiming in real quick here. So thanks, Gavin. And once again, thank you to everyone for considering this. Appreciate the time. It was very interesting last month learning about some of your needs and requirements and some of the codes and so on. But I guess when I look at this, I mean, it'd be very easy to just say, you know, with all the difficulties and expenses to do this, it'd be easy to say, well, let's just don't do it. And I could sell it as a duplex. But I guess I look at this as more of an opportunity, both for me as an owner, but as well as a city. You know, I could sell it as is at a price point. Nothing changes. We don't have any increased reporting on individuals. There's no more control over being able to shut people off. If you shut the owner off, you're now impacting 2 residents. So I don't see that we're gaining or losing anything there. Or I could sell this as individual units for you know, X plus Y cost, and you know, create a higher tax base for the city, create some ownership opportunities in a starved price point that we don't see in the area very much, get some more ownership within the city of Englewood. So I understand some of the arguments that have been made by all the members here. You know, like I said, you know, this is a large expense to do. So it's, do we not do it, or do we do it with maybe some differences? And, you know, I work in legacy areas, and, you know, when we talk about reporting and trying to get good reporting, you know, there's always exception cases, you know, that we have, and well, we have to exclude this particular neighborhood, or, you know, whatever it is to get the right data. And I get that you're trying to get to a common, consistent way of reporting and metering all of the water usage and so on. Sometimes there's just exceptions. And so I guess, again, just asking you to consider the exception here. So as an opportunity for both of us. So again, thank you. Really appreciate your consideration.
Mr. Geeson, thank you for that. I'm struggling with one thing. I guess I'll address the hands that are raised. I do want staff to add any comments they may have on Red T's presentation. But why don't Ty and then Joe for starters?
Yeah, question for Red T. Just curious what the material is of the existing service line and what the quality is like of the existing sewer main out back. Has that been scoped, or have you looked into the material in the service line?
I can answer on the front. I did scope the water up front, but that was 11 years ago. I don't recall the material, to be honest. It was all intact at that time, though.
I was mainly thinking in terms of lead or copper, if you could tell, but
I don't know. On the sewer internally in the unit, it was the iron pipe initially. We replaced all that internally, but I do not know what goes out from the back.
Thanks.
Joe?
Thanks, Chair Moore. Thanks, Mr. Geeson. My question is just out of curiosity, what are the square footage of the units after the project will be completed?
Each one is 800, which is what it is.
Okay.
We're not adding any additional square footage. So total is 1634, a total, something like that.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there additional questions? Okay, I'll slide one in. Can I invite if staff, Sarah or Peter has any comments on Red T's presentation, and in particular, they made a couple of points about not crossing other properties, setbacks, the difficulties it provides on the water line side, and it seemed like even more so on the sewer line side. Do you have any response to that?
Yeah, I don't know the question about how far off of what the spacing of water taps should be. I'm sure we could research that. I think even if the thing with the water line is these can be tunneled, so you can do a directional drill. I mean, it's more expensive, but it keeps you within that setback on the water side. On the sewer side, I'm not quite clear where the constraints are. But again, with those, I mean, with either one of these, I think there are technologies that would allow it to be constructed in a less impactful way. They just are more expensive to install.
I would think too many 90-degree angles on a sewer line would not be a good thing. Just a thought. There was a comment. I mean, I want to highlight the 2018. Sarah presented presented this earlier. The 2018 Sherman property was a condo arrangement, not a split ownership. Two separate properties that is in front of us now. It sounds like the distinction may have been made that maybe that is a solution for the applicant, but again, what's in front of us is different. Is not the same condo arrangement. Did you have any additional input on that distinction? It's okay if not. Peter, I was looking.
Yeah, I think again, I think the board has to contemplate the question that's before them, which is splitting this into two separate properties and having one service serve two different properties, which the code clearly states that it can't. So that's the water and sewer board's part of this. If there's a desire to go back and figure out a different way to zone it or a different way to sell it, if it's condos, if it's townhomes, if it's common areas and things like that, I think that at that point in time, it kicks it out of the water and sewer board and back to the community development role, because our role, or the board's role, is water and sewer service. And from the way that's proposed and the question that's being asked, it doesn't meet the code. And for the the reasons that we presented in the final slide, that's the reason why staff recommendation based on the question that's being asked is for denial, for all those reasons cited.
Thanks. Thank you, Peter. Joe and then Marjan.
Thanks. Yep. My question is if it was an arrangement more like the Sherman property where there was a common property and an HOA management, would it be possible for a variance like that to come back before Water and Sewer Board, or does that fall under a different set of code considerations?
I don't know off the top of my head because I don't know the code specifically for, I mean, we're speculating different potential options.
Mhm.
There could be something there. I'm just not sure exactly without seeing what is proposed. I think ultimately what we want to make sure what we want to make sure happens is whether it's a common ownership through an HOA or it's two separate service lines, is it each unit should be able to be shut off independently and should be metered independently. So if they were to come back with some other potential form of the question, we would still want the independent metering and the independent shut off. Now, whether that comes off of a single service line or not, that we'd have to go research as it relates to condos or townhomes or things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Marjan.
My question is that in the future, what kind of a guarantee they can provide for the future owners of this property, as considered as two properties, that the conflict that they might have in their agreement, reaching an agreement that, okay, you can come through my property and you can do what serves you. That I just feel like we're making a decision that it allows the risk is being transferred to the future owners of this property. And I like to see what kind of solutions he can have for those scenarios. I think that is our responsibility to make sure that we're just not, transferring the risk to somebody else without considering their options. Because what if they don't know? And when they're selling that, I understand they can put that in their contract and all of that. But what is his solution? I like to see that, because I feel like he thinks the questions that are asked maybe is personal, and it's not. I just happen to know somebody that went through that. Not only they have to deal with the expenses of dealing with putting the new line in there and dealing with all the problems that was arise with, they also had to deal with a disagreement between the two owners, which cost them a lot of attorney fees to reach out to because their benefit was creating a hardship on their neighbor. So. And sometimes that is not that valuable for neighbors. And so I really think that we should kind of reach out and see what is his solutions for these kind of scenarios. And we should consider those. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Comment? Ty?
Yeah, I guess to Marjan's point, I'm a little more concerned that we're considering making decisions on 1959 infrastructure here. That seems like a mistake, knowing we have the opportunity to modernize. It seems like we don't know what material the service line is. We don't know the shape of the sewer main or the sewer line running out of the house. So I think that's worth the board considering as well.
Let's see. Peter, go ahead. I'm going to move us soon to a motion and discussion of the motion. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Josh Roach, Interim Deputy Director of O&M, texted me and said that our minimum offset is 18 inches either side for water services and sewer services. And that's because you want to be able to fit in a repair clamp if necessary.
Thank you. Gavin, please go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I just wanted to respond to some of the questions that were asked of us. And thank you for the minimum requirements as well for the water line. So in terms of the common ownership via an HOA, the party wall management would be that management group. So that would be the common ownership of that water line. And there was a question regarding the ability to, how do we manage the common areas and if there's any sort of disputes or things like that. I mean, that condition already exists. If one tenant wasn't paying their water bill and Mr. Geeson didn't want to pay that bill out of pocket, you guys would still shut off the water to the entire building for the exact same problem. So the condition already exists. The other way to make sure that we can, I mean, nothing in life is guaranteed, but as best as we possibly can, we have a pretty ironclad party wall agreement that we've used on literally thousands of units across Denver for townhome projects. It's very common in a townhome project, or kind of the whole Denver metro really, where there's going to be spaces where we call it the reasonable access clause, right? So someone has to have legal, reasonable access to something that impacts their property. So for example, a shared drive aisle, like even if someone else legally owns that section of drive aisle, it's not like they can come after someone for walking across it. It's the same kind of thing here. It would be a very similar setup to if we had changed the layout to mirror the Sherman property. All of that would become just kind of common area, and everybody would have reasonable access to any part of the property, including like, that's actually why Mr. Geeson went through the effort of fixing the electrical on the site, is so that there's actually reasonable access, so that, you know, God forbid there's any sort of panel issues or anything like that, that each homeowner has reasonable access to their own situation. And that's, again, managed through the party wall agreement. And that's a legal document that we walk through item by item with every buyer every single time, as well as on top of that, the party wall agreement is being managed by a party wall company. That management company is handling, essentially being the mediary between the two parties if there are any disputes, or if there's any disagreements, or if there's any questions about what that reasonable access looks like, or if there's any, you know, anything that were to arise, such as one person paying and the other one not. Again, that can be handled by putting in language that there's an escrow of, you know, X amount of dollars that would cover a reasonable amount of time, so that nothing would happen suddenly. Certainly nothing would happen without everyone being able to be properly notified, and for a solution to be found. And this is also my coworker, Josh.
Hey, sorry, we're working on a tablet here, so I don't really fit in the screen. My name is Josh Botts. I'm a senior development project manager here at Red T. Just wanted to add one little piece of information too for the board's consideration before you make your vote here. Sarah's presentation, which was pretty thorough, and appreciate that. You did mention that it's pretty typical for existing duplexes to have one line in service. And that's what we're looking at here today. I mean, if we're talking about the sewer lines can't be determined by taps anyways, because that doesn't exist, we're really just looking at the front, the water line, and how does that operate? I think it's been noted as well, there are some significant design challenges here, specifically being the gas line. It was noted already that the cost to make any changes to gas lines already substantially more expensive, and the cost to run a gas line to both units, as demonstrated, would be multiple 90-degree angles. It's not good design. It isn't best practice. So really what we're talking about here is the water line. And I think there are already existing models that have been used whether that's through the common area or if that's just running through the main line and having a separate service tap, that make far more sense than trying to run two separate, mains or taps from each, or sorry, two separate services for both properties in this case. We have to kind of keep in context too, this has been in its current configuration since 1959. So this has been operating the way it has been, and to our knowledge and to the city's knowledge, there's no legal action that's ever been taken. No one's ever got their water line shut off when they've been paying their bills. So just final consideration, and thank you for your time tonight.
Absolutely, thank you.
Marjan, final comment before I move us to the motion and discussion.
I was wondering, Josh, if you could give us an example of like how much would be the time frame, or what would be the amount. I mean, let's say if the cost of their problem would be like $40,000. I mean, what is this amount of escrow that is in this account? So I mean, what is reasonable when somebody comes and purchase the house, and what would be the reasonable, since I don't know anything about that. So if you could educate me, I really appreciate it.
Sorry, thank you, Gavin.
Sorry, we were on.
Yeah, go ahead. Do you know typically our escrow amounts that we could hold?
So this has actually never been an issue before in any one of our townhome or duplex projects. We've never needed the escrow. This is just something that we would be willing, like you can put together, I mean, what would the typical water bill be for this property, and put together a couple months worth of water bills. I mean, that's at most $1,000 in escrow. Like it wouldn't be much. Again, that's not something we've ever had to do before. It's just a consideration that we'd be willing to make if that provides some ease and helps you guys with your considerations of like, hey, we want to make sure no one gets their water shut off. We're right there with you. So it just seems like a very reasonable, simple, easy to manage solution where that would give easily several months worth of provided service, where let's say someone didn't pay, that party wall management group would then have several months to track down the payments and get caught up and make sure everything's current without any interruption to the water service whatsoever. So it wouldn't be like an escrow on a mortgage or anything like that. It would just be part of those party wall management fees. You would just put an escrow in to essentially provide that reassurance.
Thank you, Josh. Pieter?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we're talking about a lot of what ifs here, and we're almost trying to design it on the fly and speculate about solutions that could or could not work. So all of these, so what I would say right now is nothing right now is approved. The question before the board right now is to split this into two separate ownerships and have those two separate ownerships be served by one water and one sewer. That's the question. The code is pretty clear on that. I understand that this has operated the same way since 1950, but we're asking for it to be different now. That's the request, is not to operate the way it's been operating, is to operate a new way, and that's to split two new ownerships. And so I appreciate the discussion about trying to figure out how to potentially solve this. The question before the board right now is to approve this variance of code, which is fairly clear, and and anything beyond that is really, trying to figure out how to solve it independent of what the question is. So I just want to bring it back to what the question actually is.
Gavin, I'm going to let you squeeze in one or two more sentences, but I've got to move this far. Wait, did you withdraw your hand?
No, appreciate that. Just put it down when you acknowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just
okay.
real quick, just wanted to point out that part of our party wall agreement, it is mentioned, this bill can be addressed to the manager of that party wall. So it can be it can be mailed to the manager of that address. So it doesn't have to be billed to both. That's where the escrow account would take hold. The escrow account would cover those bills. The escrow account is collected every month. So there is solutions to that. We do certainly appreciate that comment as well, but we do have options there in terms of how we would manage that and ensure that there isn't an issue with a future homeowner having to burden the cost of a neighboring property.
All right, thank you. All right, board, I'm going to take this to the board now. Got a couple procedural moves, so bear with me. The first, I am going to make a motion to take this motion off the table. I'll need a second and a vote. This is not a vote to approve or disapprove the variance. It's merely to get the original motion back up in front of us. So I'm moving to remove this motion from the table. Can I get a second?
Do a second.
All right, Marjan, all in favor of removing this from the table?
Hey.
Aye.
Aye.
Joe, I'm sorry, do you have a question?
I just didn't understand what motion we were moving to and from.
So last time there was a motion to deny the variance request. It was seconded. I then made a motion to table it to this meeting. So all we're doing now is reinstating Ty's motion for discussion and voting. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. I'm sorry. Did we get? Was there any objection? Any objections? Any abstentions on that last one? Okay. If I've got this right now, the motion on the table now for our discussion and voting, and it's already been seconded, is that the motion was to recommend the city manager deny the variance request for the 3106 South Acoma property. Ty, I'm just going to ask for your concurrence. That was in effect your motion last time, right? Okay, thank you. So at this point, let's just move into final discussion about that motion and leading to our votes on that. Joe, do you have another question?
No, I was just preparing for discussion.
Okay, lead on if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm actually, I guess, opposed to the motion on the table. I'm supportive of this. I think we need to make it as simple as possible to be converting these homes that are in legal duplex areas into duplexes. And I think the party wall agreement to me is satisfactory that there's a shared ownership and over the water and sewer line. So I will be a no vote on this one.
Ty.
Yeah, I had a question from Peter or maybe Sarah on this. I know the presentation was saying a lot of trying to cite this Sherman 2018 decision as precedent, but from what I'm understanding, that seems like it was a staff mistake or oversight. Is that the official stance of you guys at Utilities, that was a mistake, a one-off that should not be precedent?
And I'm going to jump in on that one, and then Peter or Sarah, you can supplement further. The Sherman property was certainly a separate zone and a separate situation. I'm not sure, I know it's not entirely clear to me where that should have fallen in terms of this board. What is true is it did not come in front of this board. So it is not board precedent. And I think there are enough distinctions in that situation that I don't believe that it's clear that it was oversight or not. Certainly if it came up again, I'd want to be paying very close attention. With that, Peter or Sarah, do you want to add additional comment?
Peter, I saw you come off mute. You want to go?
Oh
No, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree. It's a separate situation because there was the common area around the condo. It's not necessarily comparable to this situation that splits the property into two separate properties with no common area and the water and sewer service lines on one property but not the other.
In townhome, again, we can go on, and Peter was making this point. We can dive in a lot of different ways. Townhomes have one line coming in and feeding different things, but there's just different zones, different setups. In the general, the code is for duplexes, if they're set into separate ownership, as separate lines. And so the variance is against that fairly black and white code. Marjan.
I just wanted to find out is that I completely agree with Joe that we do need a solution for the situation that people that they have this dilemma to be solved. Definitely, I agree with that. But also consider the fact that what kind of a guarantee do we have that these agreements are so written? And I liked your ideas of what you're going to put in your agreements between the two parties. But how can we make a decision now without seeing those agreements? One. Two, what guarantees do we have these agreements are not going to change later? Three is like, how do you know these managers that are running is something that is not one-sided or two-sided? These are the questions goes through my mind. And I feel like if I'm going to make a decision based on something that I don't have any kind of a clue of what it was going to be included, because clearly this is your first time as well as it is ours. How can you make a decision so fast in considering all the scenarios that could possibly? I am sure you're an expert in this area. That's why I was asking that question. So that really helps me to make a decision if you can help me with that. Thank you so much.
And Marjan, I think that's a fantastic question. I'm going to suggest though that we've got all the information on the table that we're going to get for taking votes tonight. And if that leaves you, that's going to leave you wherever it leaves you. But at this point, I think we need to stop taking additional input in and help the board members get to a vote. Jim, did you withdraw your hand? Jim?
I did withdraw, thinking that you were calling for vote. Okay, my opinion.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, no, I'm not calling for the vote. I'm just, this is the chance for the board to discuss with the board, their thoughts, not further additional input from at this point on the facts. So Jim and then Ty.
If I recall correctly from last month, this duplex was purchased duplex. So therefore now change.
Jim, I'm sorry. Ty, we just confirmed Jim was choppy to you?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Jim, I don't want to miss out on your comments. So we need to try again. It was all choppy. It keeps freezing. Okay.
Let me try.
Well, I hear you at the moment. Try again. Go for it.
Okay. When this was purchased, it was purchased as a duplex, rental duplex, and that was a number of years ago. And now it's looking at it later on and wanting to change it to a sales of two separate units. And even bringing up the word self, and I believe it's a real problem to vote any other way but supporting denying it. So I'll be voting to deny this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I think we got the gist of it. Ty?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Joe that we need more accessible, affordable housing, but I'm not sure that we want to do that at the expense of the integrity of the water management system we're building. For an outsider perspective, this is something that I wouldn't see flying in other utilities. I know for a fact that this would not happen within Denver Water Service area. And I'm just so nervous that making a one-off decision based on a water line and a sewer line that we know are kind of reaching the end of their useful life, and they could even be potentially lead. So I just don't feel comfortable without that information. So I'll definitely be not approving the variance.
And I'll share from my perspective, I'm very, very, very sympathetic to the request. Our standard our standard code though is that when these duplexes are split, this is the requirement that goes with it. And so I think the variance needs to be sufficiently compelling. I'd be much more comfortable, and maybe a solution here, but it's not mine to find, is the condo arrangement in the common area. I think that does make a distinction. But as a general matter, you know, generally these duplexes are being scraped and rebuilt, but I don't think fundamentally this is that different. The bottom line, the property is being split into 2 single family homes. And I struggle that there's enough reason to break the code, the way the code, the black and white aspects of the code. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to respond to a couple things. I totally understand where the my fellow board members are coming from. I think the code was designed for new builds and doesn't speak specifically to modifications to old properties. And that's, to me, that's where this comes in, is this is all existing infrastructure that's there being utilized now in a slightly different way. But I'm satisfied that this is a good way of using property. Splitting an old property into 2, leaving the infrastructure the same, allows for that cheap home ownership. And it's not, I don't think our code specifically address duplexing old properties. And so that's why I think this variance makes sense, is the code was designed for new properties. But that's where I stand.
Wonderful. Mayor Sierra?
Thank you, Chair. I too will be voting in favor of the motion on the table. We had something similar come up to council a few years back regarding small lots, and with the narrow scope that we're looking to judge this build or this variance, is enough for me to vote in favor for this. Obviously, it's not meeting city code, so maybe there are questions of whether or not there's code changes that need to occur. But just based on the narrow aspect of this variance, I will be voting in favor of the motion on the table.
Any final comments? Otherwise, I'm going to bring this to a vote. Gavin, I hope you'll respect this. I've got I think we've covered everything, and we've had this is final board discussion and vote time. Ty?
Yeah, I just want to add, I think there are some mechanisms that could exist for this scenario where we're looking at splitting lots, whether that's doing development rebates, whether it's setting up a fund that exists for people to tap into. I'm not sure making a one-off decision here makes the most sense to me. I think there are mechanisms that could make sense. I'm not sure we want to go down this variance route. I think it could set a weird precedent, just like the 2018 Sherman did. Without either having it expressly written in code, having the municipal staff actually come up with a policy for it, or setting up a separate fund.
Mayor Sierra, did you have another comment, or is it leftover hand? I'm not here. I'm
trying to take my hand down, but it's not letting me. So.
Okay, perfect. Pieter, as staff, I'll still give you a chance to add.
Mine is purely procedural, and it's just to, in advance of the vote, if you could just repeat the motion so that it's clear of what a yes vote and a no vote is actually saying. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make very, very certain of that. Okay, I'm going to bring this to a vote. Brenda, I think the answer is no, but you don't, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have the exact wording of the motion that is on the table. Is that correct?
The exact wording from the last meeting was to deny it.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to quote it. If not, I'll come close enough that we can work with that. I'm good. You know what? The motion on the table that I'm going to take votes on now is to recommend that the city manager deny, based on the board's recommendation, the variance request for the proposed property separation at 3106 South Acoma. So this is denying a variance request to get by with essentially single water and sewer. Now, with that, I'd like to take votes, and I want to be. We should be very clear on voting to deny the variance. Boy, that is kind of
Do you want me to
confusing,
call
isn't it?
out everybody?
Yes. Yeah, let's just do that, Brenda. So again, that we're going to vote now on denying. The motion is to deny the variance request. Brenda, please take count.
Okay. I'm gonna go off of the list on the screen, so give me a minute. Chair Moore,
I'm going to vote to deny the request based on the reasoning I stated earlier.
Ty Brisky,
I'm gonna vote yes to deny.
Councilmember Woodward,
Yes to deny.
Board Member Roth,
Yes to deny based on the staff's recommendations and the fact that there are other options that they can pursue.
Vice Chair Havernick,
Deny.
Councilmember Anderson,
Nay.
I'm sorry, let's go back. I want to just be really clear. Was Chuck's vote clear? Deny the variance, or? Yeah, Chuck, will you clarify your vote?
To deny the variance.
Thank you very much. And now, go ahead. And Joe, you were in favor of the variance, correct?
Yeah, I'm a nay on the motion.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, the confusing on this. Go ahead, Brenda.
Board Member Ridley,
Yes to deny.
Mayor Sierra,
Aye.
Board Member Freeman,
As much as compassion I have for your journey, I must say yes to the deny. I'm sorry.
and Board Member Mercier.
I am with Joe, so I am nay.
I believe that's everyone.
Okay, just for the record, we have 10 voting to deny the variance, 2 that were voting to grant the variance, as long as no one's objecting to the 10 and 2.
It's actually 8 and 2.
All right.
It should be 8 and 2.
All right, I'll grant you that my chicken scratch must have messed something up. All right, 8 and 2. With that, the variant, the motion carries. The variance is denied from the Water and Sewer Board's perspective. Thank you all. Thank you for the applicant for your patience through this process. I know it's long and a couple sessions and all the time it took you to get here, but we appreciate your patience as we work through this. With that, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Chairman Moore.
Yes.
I'd just like to say thank you to the board. And just one point of clarification from us on our end. Was that also a motion to deny the sewer in addition to the water? So we would need both. We need separate taps for the sewer, even though there's no tap for the sewer per se, but we need a separate sewer service line.
Yes, the variance would be, you would need a, I mean, Peter, clarify again, the variance would need to be, I'm sorry, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, the variance as we took it was to vary the code for both water and sewer. So the denial of the variance applies to both water and sewer. That's the way we've been approaching it.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item. To the board, I'm going to set this up a little bit. We knew we'd run late today, but again, these are meaty topics and for the citizens' sake, worthy of the discussion. I appreciate the board's patience and mental effort in getting us here. In moving on to the next items, getting my agenda straight. I just want to set a little bit of background. The Water and Sewer Department the way things have evolved now uses more, there's more contract work that is done than historically, more was done, I say, within the, with city staff. The implication of that, I mean, we do more contracts, and also that means the board technically is seeing more contracts. We're trying to move towards streamlining it a little bit, as long as the board is comfortable, with the process, the procedures in place, the processes in place for doing these contracts. I think we can accelerate the amount of time we spend on these. So for tonight, you'll see we have a number of new business contracts under item 6A. We're going to move those forward in one single motion that references the agenda rather than spell each of these things out at length by item. And we're going to see if that kind of can work as a new ongoing approach. So with that, I will turn it over to Sarah again for the new business.
Sorry, still on mute. Thank you very much, Chair Moore. Okay, so this is the contracting approach that we are going to use for the electrical instrumentation and control improvements that are needed at the Allen Water Treatment Plant and some of our remote pump station facilities. So in 2019, the master plan studied improvements that were needed to address, one of the components of that was to address the electrical instrumentation and control needs at the Allen Water Treatment Plant and remote pump station sites. Things identified in that plan were emergency backup power needs, electrical improvements and instrumentation improvements that really create a backbone for some of the process optimization that we are planning at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. And they really focus on single points of failure and reducing risk. So there are 3 distinct fields that are needed to address these improvements, and that's a programmer, integrator, and electrician. So that is why we are bringing those contracts to you as a package tonight. So we staff did contractor selection for both electrical and instrumentation through a solicitation process. So I'll start with the electrical contractors. The electricians will be tasked to ensure a power source is adequate and run the power control conduit and wire to any instrumentation and control equipment. So basically procure and install any equipment that doesn't need programming or need to be smart. There was an RFP released in December 2021 where 4 contractors had responded. 3 firms were selected based on their familiarity with city systems, water and wastewater sector experience, and then a fair and reasonable labor costs and markups for their labor and equipment. Those 3 firms were Gilmore Electric, McDade Woodcock, and Magna, I think that's 4, USA. So we initiated contracts with these 3 contractors as on-call contractors for $90,000. Each of these contractors have performed under those on-call contracts, and we'd like to increase the on-call contract for each of them up to $500,000 with a contract amendment. Now, the on-call contracts for each of these would not necessarily guarantee that they would do work up to the $500,000. We would just have the availability for them to be called for emergencies or other projects as we are moving through the plant and remote pump station work. So moving on to instrumentation. So instrumentation contractors provide equipment for programming. They calibrate and configure the instrumentation, and they procure and purchase and install the equipment and make sure it's working properly. properly. So because the integrators will purchase and install the equipment, there's also a factory certified startup and extended warranty that comes along with their contracts. So a statement of qualifications was released in April 2022. There were 7 contractors that responded, and we narrowed that down to 3 for an on-call contract similar to the electricians. So that's AM West, Huffman Engineering, and Timberline Electric and Control. And we're recommending a contract amount for each of these contractors for $250,000. Again, there's no guarantee that these contractors would perform up to that amount, but they'd be available through an on-call. So finally, we have the programming contractor. The programmers implement the control strategy to the supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA system. They're writing the code to create the human machine interface and communicate with the the instrumentation and control equipment. So we have worked in the past with Golden Automation. So we're recommending a optimal source. Golden Automation has assisted the city in developing its current instrumentation and control standards. The city IT department supports this consistency across the network and the network software and hardware programming standards. And it's the contractor that's used for South Platte Renew, and they've worked with South Platte Renew since 2018, or excuse me, since 2008. So they're familiar with our standards and process, and which is why we would optimal source this contract, and are recommending an amount up to $120,000, again under an on-call. So just a brief summary. Again, we're looking to upgrade the emergency backup power systems, install power supply batteries at the water treatment plant, and then replace variable frequency drive and motor control centers at the remote pump stations and at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. Just to give the board context in what's in the approved budget for 2022 and then proposed for 2023, there is $3 million for process improvements and electrical and INC improvements, up to $3 million for this year. And then in our proposed budget, there's $2.45 million, which also includes PLC replacement at the plant. So I will open it up for any questions.
I'm not seeing any. So what I'm going to do is ask for a motion to recommend that City Council approve by motion Water and Sewer Board Agenda Items 6AI through 6A7 or as written. So could I get such a motion?
I move.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Don. Now, any further discussion? And I will also say, as we do this kind of approach, if any board member wanted to pull a given item and do that separately, we can always do that as well. But any further conversation on these, on the collection of these 7 items? Okay, Jim? I can't, Jim, we can't hear you.
Has to do,
okay, there you are.
well, I didn't unmute. So my question has to do with the electrical. Unfortunately, trying to get on to this other computer to go back and forth. But it seemed to me that the electricians' hourly rates and the rates that were provided for in the WIFIA agreement were different, quite different. And so my question is, or since I can't find it right now, is that I think staff needs to take a look at that and make sure that the electricians' rates aren't higher than what's in that agreement in the event the lender says no to the contract. Was that?
So Jim, or excuse me, Councilmember Woodward, I want to make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. So the WIFIA rates would be at kind of a minimum. So if the electrical rates are higher, that would be what's in the contract. Is that?
What was being proposed by the contractor was for electrical was higher than what was provided for in the agreement, as I recall looking through this, and to find it, in this PowerPoint as big as it is, or in this whole document, I'm not getting right to it.
Sure.
So I'm just encouraging staff to look at that WIFIA agreement to make sure that those numbers work out okay.
So the WIFIA numbers that are in there are not necessarily related to an agreement. Those are the minimum numbers that, or the minimum wage rates that WIFIA would use to compare to whether or not it's eligible for WIFIA loan funds through our loan agreement with the EPA.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think it actually said on the WIFIA agreement, those rates were not 2021 rates. So this being 2022 and all the inflation that's gone on, I'm sure they're different.
We'll absolutely make sure we've got at the very minimum the WIFIA rates in the contract for the electricians. Yep.
Okay, that's all I was asking at one point.
Thank you, Jim. Seeing no further hands up, I'll go ahead and bring this to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, we'll move on to item 6B. Pieter or Maria, I'm not sure which. Probably collective. Anyway.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So we're going to try and speed things up here and just hit on some highlights so that we can try and keep you a little bit on schedule. Pieter, did you want to say anything before we started?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is that we're just going to go through one last, this month, we're going to talk through all the budget priorities and our finalized capital plan. We're going to do that quickly because most of this stuff is what you've seen already. So we're just going to hit the highlights of what's changed. And then when we come back in September, we'll bring a set of budget numbers for water, sewer, and storm that would be recommended for approval with recommended for council to approve. And so this is another step of just refining what we've talked about. If we had more time, we'd probably spend some more time on it, but it's really all stuff that you've seen, and you'll see the changes as noted.
Yeah, great, thank you. So yeah, again, really nothing has changed from when we presented on the stormwater program since last time. Again, we're focused on delivering our projects that were prioritized within our stormwater master plan that was completed in 2020. We are planning 2 enhancement requests. One is for an additional project engineer, and that's to execute on the various projects for stormwater. We are planning a significant project in kind of the southwest portion of town to build a large stormwater detention pond in the range of about $23 million. We're also pursuing federal FEMA funds for that. That would likely result in potentially a grant from FEMA for that. So we have a number of projects lined up. So we'd like to move forward with that. And that is in alignment with the plan within the master plan as well. And then secondly, we're going to plan to buy some compliance software. Part of the program for stormwater is we're required through the state to administer what's called the Municipal Separated Stormwater System, or MS4. And this compliance software allows us to track all those activities so that we can report back to the state annually on achieving each of those measures. So that just goes into a little bit more detail there. You can see the pricing for both of those. And then finally, we are planning and have already pursued with the City Council a stormwater rate increase. This was necessary in order to complete our process for the state revolving loan fund. We were able to secure a $26 million loan through Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And so we're set to close on that, but they did want us to see and show that that rate increase would go into effect on January 1st. So you can see there, our revenue increase is anticipated about an additional $1 million in 2023 over the 2022 anticipated rates. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a quick
Sorry,
question.
Marjan, go ahead. Maybe that was. And then Travis next.
Okay.
I goofed up. I was on mute myself.
Thank you. Ms. DeAndrea, I was wondering, you brought up these payments, are they coming through a additional loan that we're getting through FEMA? And what's the significance of FEMA loan?
Sure. So we continue to pursue a variety of alternate funding sources. So we didn't have a lot in the fund originally about 4 years ago, and we've increased the rates steadily. We completed a rate study in 2019 and have raised the rates annually in accordance with that plan. But we do continue to pursue grants and loans where possible so that we don't have to issue debt from the city in order to fund these very large, highly costly projects. So we are, as I mentioned, we had a state revolving loan fund, which is $26 million as a loan. So we would have to pay that back with interest, but they write it down on the interest for us. So I believe we locked in at 2.25%. So, which isn't bad. But then we are still pursuing for that one very large pond project in the southwest portion of town. And that's located roughly at Windermere and Radcliffe. We are pursuing through the Federal Emergency Management Association, or FEMA, a grant to construct the majority of the cost, or about somewhere we could potentially get between $15 and $19 million towards that project.
So my concern is that why would the FEMA, what's the obligation of the citizens to this loan? Because I fail to see how FEMA loan could benefit the citizens without, what are the obligations? Because we haven't seen that, right?
Yes, so FEMA, it's intended as an emergency response.
I'm familiar with who FEMA is. I just can't see the connection between FEMA and the storm lines with the loan that you're getting and what it obligates us to it.
Yes, so if we were to receive the FEMA money, that would be a grant that we would not have to pay back. And the intent is that it would reduce the potential for flood damage to both property and potentially harmful to or flooding of people's homes and businesses. So that's really the connection to emergency management.
Would you be able to send me some material on that so I could actually?
Sure. Yep. We do have, I can certainly send that to you. And then the loan would have to be paid back. And so we've structured the rates assuming that we have to pay back these loans, or we would have to issue debt in the form of bonds. So that is worked into the calculation of how we set the rates. But I'll be happy to send you some more information.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Travis?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I don't remember on my bill, is the storm drain fee spread out over the year, or is it a one-time fee once a year, or how is that?
We are going to monthly as well on the utility bills for stormwater.
So the $57 is the total for the year, but the increase will show up monthly. Is that correct?
Actually, that's shown, that's a quarterly fee. So it would be 1/3 of that per month.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry for that confusion.
No, I just wanted to know how much my bill was going to go up.
All right. Seeing no other hands, can I get a motion to recommend that City Council approve by ordinance and resolution the 2023 budget and updated capital improvement program for the water, sewer, and stormwater enterprise funds, including the corresponding rates and fees for 2023?
I move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
Thank you. Further discussion? All right, I'm sorry, Mayor Sierra, go ahead.
Actually, so obviously we've had numerous discussions on this on the budget over the past, since March about this, as well as the fee increases. Obviously, it's not something that we want to do, but based on the capital needs of the city, it's something that we definitely need to do. And lastly, just as a note, I know that many of you may not know, but Maria DeAndre is going to be leaving us, and I just wanted to send her a thank you for all the work that she's done with Public Works. So I didn't want to leave the opportunity to not say those words. Obviously, I'll be saying more at city council meetings here in the coming weeks. But thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right. 7A, the water efficiency plan. And I bet Pieter presents this in a very efficient manner.
We are going to present this very efficiently. So what we're actually going to do in the interest of time, since we have 1 minute left, the notice that I want to provide you today is that that we have a water efficiency plan update that will be going to a required public notice. So it's a 60-day public notice that we will be issuing it for public comment. We were going to present just an overview of the efficiency plan today. However, since we are running out of time, we'll defer that actual presentation until September, which will be during that 60-day period. But we want to get it out for that public notice, so we can, in the interest of time, defer that to next month.
Wonderful. Any final comments from the board? Maria, I'd like to thank you on the board's behalf for your service as well, and wish you best of luck in your next endeavor.
Thank you.
With that, this meeting is adjourned. Again, thank you all for your patience through this. I know our meetings have been long, but go have a good evening with what's left. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, all.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Victoria? No.